Hello, this is Mr. Coker, and I'm going to do a series of videos, work you through the lab for Module 11. It's actually Lab 10, but it's for Module 11 on lipids and carbohydrates. So I'm going to make this lab into a video instead of an in-person lab. So starting with Part A, lipids in snack foods. Lipids are another name for fats or oils. So if you think about foods having oil, being oily, or being fatty, fats or oils, that's what we're testing for here. It turns out that this nonpolar solvent, petroleum ether, actually does a pretty good job of dissolving fats and oils. And so we are going to attempt to weigh the food and then dissolve as much of the fat and oil out of the food and then reweigh the food after, and in an indirect way try to measure the amount of oil or fat that is in the food. Now, before we get started, one of the things you're supposed to do on this lab is to write a hypothesis. Right here it says to procedure 0, write the hypothesis. You should decide which of the snack foods that I'm going to be extracting oil from, which of the snack foods has the highest percentage of lipids. So your three choices are going to be original Ritz crackers. So I've got a Ritz cracker, and we're going to extract the oil from that Ritz cracker and try to measure it. I also have Lay's classic potato chips. So these two potato chips right here, see if I can get it where you can see it in the camera. Those are the potato chips that I'm going to be extracting the oil from. Then my third item are Fritos corn chips. So actually I have 3 corn chips here. And I'm going to extract the lipids from those as well. So to start with, I've done some pre-work here. I've labeled my beakers. And the label on the beaker has my initials, TK. It says cracker, and that this beaker is going to be for lipids and petroleum ether. I did that on 3 separate beakers, one for the cracker, one for the potato chip, and one for the corn chip. So that's procedure 1. I've made the beaker, I've labeled it properly. Okay, now I'm going to label a coffee filter. So I actually didn't bring in any coffee filters, I'm just using filter paper, same stuff as coffee paper. I'm going to put my initials on here. And each coffee paper is going to have the food that it's going to have in it. Each coffee filter or filter paper. Notice I've pre-folded these so they fit right into the funnel. Here's my funnel, and they fit right into the funnel and make a nice cone in the funnel. Now the funnels are actually going to be down in flasks. So I'm going to pour through the paper, and the petroleum ether will be collected in the flasks. So I've got that for each of my snack foods. TK potato chip. And the last one, TK corn chip. The reason why we put our initial on them is these are all going to end up in a drying oven to dry out, to evaporate out the petroleum ether, and you want to be able to tell whose is whose. Since I'll be the only one performing the lab and videoing it, really doesn't matter, but I'm just trying to follow directions. So number 2, I've labeled the coffee filter with my initials and the name of my snack food. And now it's time to mass the coffee filter. So in your data table, the numbers I'm going to be reading off should go step 2, which is about halfway down the paper. So we're not doing it in the order of this table here. You're actually going to put step 2 here and here. There's 2 places you put it, one up here and one down here. It's the mass of fresh coffee filter. So in other words, before any of the lipids or anything like that has been contaminating the paper, this is fresh, clean filter paper. So I'm going to give you 3 numbers. The one for the corn chips is going to go in here as the first one. And then on the back, on page 147, you've got a place for the same information, mass of fresh coffee filter here and here, step 2 for the potato chip and the buttery cracker. So let's start with the corn chip. This is the filter paper for the corn chip. No, it is not. It's the potato chip. Good thing I labeled those. This one's the one for the corn chip. My balance is currently reading 0. And I put the filter paper on there. And I think you can see it reads 1.22 grams. So now in my data table, mass of fresh coffee filter, I'm going to write 1.22 grams in 2 different places. Up here and down here. Now for the potato chip. So take that one off, put the potato chip one on. Potato chip paper only weighs 1.15 grams. Don't forget, show all of the sig figs from the balance, both decimal places. And don't forget to include the unit grams when you do this as well. And the third number is going to be for the buttery cracker, or the Ritz cracker, which have a nice buttery flavor. Butter is a bit of a lipid, isn't it? It weighs slightly less, even more, 1.14 grams. 1.14 grams. Okay. Put them all back into their funnels. Now I'm moving on to step 3 was to fold the filter in half and half again, so it looks like a fourth. Pull 3 layers to one side, open it up and create a cone. So that's what I did. I folded it in half, folded it in fourths. Take 3 in one and open it up to make a cone. Let's see how a filter paper can be turned into a cone. I think you guys have already done that before, both in Chem 1 and earlier this year in Chem 2. All right. Now they don't stay down very well, but once I start what I'm going to do next, they will. So we're on to number 4. We're going to place 2 to 3 grams of snack food in the cone. Now, I'm not going to weigh this until after I've crushed it, but I did sort of pre-weigh to make sure that my samples were somewhere in the 2 to 3 grams range. Might be a little more than 3 grams for one of them, but see, here's my cracker, and here's this cracker here. So I'm going to carefully break it into smaller pieces with my fingers. So I sort of broke it up a little bit. Then I'm going to fold this over, because because I want to get it as crumbly as I can. They say use a rolling pin. Closest thing I have to a rolling pin is one of these mortar and pestle things. I believe this one's called the pestle, and the other part's called the mortar. I might be wrong. I might have those two mixed up, but I don't use them that often. I'm crushing that down, trying not to rip the paper, but trying to crush that down as small as possible, because I want to get to as much of that oil as I can with my petroleum ether. I don't want any of the oil down inside a piece of cracker. I want that cracker as crushed into small pieces as possible. I can already begin to see some of the oil seeping into the paper there. You can see kind of oil spots on the paper because Ritz crackers, pretty oily, pretty greasy. So now I have my crushed, you can see there I got my crushed cracker there, and it's in the paper. I've already weighed the paper, so by weighing the paper with the cracker in it, I'm going to know how much the cracker weighed. So the weight is 4.54 grams. So that number goes, go back to our data table. This would be the mass of coffee filter plus crushed food before petroleum ether is used. 4.54 grams. It's called step 4. It actually goes in 2 places in the data table, because the data table is arranged in a way to help us with the math. So it goes at the very top, 4.54 grams, because now you can subtract the filter paper and find out how much the food weighed before. And then it also goes here because we're going to subtract after we've extracted the oil to find out the grams of oil that we extracted. So now, and I'm only going to show the procedure for one of these for time's sake. I'm going to do the procedure on all 3 foods, but I'm just going to show it. Just remembered I did this in the wrong order. Back up. The 4.54 grams is not part the corn chips data. So if you've already written that in, mark that out. That's not the corn chip data. 4.54 grams is the buttery cracker, the Ritz cracker. Step 4, 4.54. So now that's actually where it goes, the 4.54 number. And later I'll give you the numbers for the potato chip and the Frito corn chip. It's just at this point I'm going to show the procedure with the buttery cracker. Okay. So now we're up to step 5. Carefully pour as much of your crushed snack food as you can into the labeled beaker. I'm going to try to get that cracker into this beaker here. Knock as much of it off of this paper as I can, but you can see there's still some food sort of stuck here. And use my finger to scrape it off, then use my thumb to scrape it off my finger. Trying to get as much of that food as I can into that beaker. Right? So I got my paper pretty well cleared off and into the beaker. Keep the cone. Yep, keep this. We're not going to get rid of this. Using a graduated cylinder, measure 15 milliliters of the petroleum ether. I thought I'd grabbed a graduated cylinder. I'll go back here and get one. Just got these in. Brand new this year, brand new this spring. Got some nice new red and gray and glass 25 milliliter graduated cylinders. And I'm going to add 15 milliliters to here. I don't know if you can see the numbers on that one. But I am at 15 milliliters. Pour that into there, and it really just soaks up that buttery cracker there. Swirl that around. Now right now what that petroleum ether is doing is it is beginning to dissolve the fats out of that cracker there. Now I would never do this around a fire because petroleum ether is very flammable. So now I've set my cone. I'm going to set my cone into the funnel. I'm going to pour my beaker out. Into this flask. Try to get as much of that solid in there as I can without losing it. Okay, so that is seeping through right now, dissolving my ink from my Sharpie as well. Maybe I should have done that in pencil. It says I can use 2 samples of 2 milliliters to finish rinsing. I've actually got these pipettes that have 1 milliliter in it, so I'm going to do it 4 times. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to tip my beaker up on its nearly vertical here with its top open side down. I'll try to wash out, if I can here, try to wash that cracker right out of there. Use that gets it to slide out. Trying to get as much of the cracker into the paper as possible. I'm trying not to have any left in the beaker here. Using the liquid to wash it in. And you can see I've still got some residue of cracker there, but I still have 3 more milliliters I'm allowed to. I could do more. It's just the more you put in there, the more you have to dry out. The more you have to evaporate it. Oh, that's doing a good job. Washing it right out of there. And one more. So as you can tell, I've actually cleaned out my beaker quite well. Very little food residue left in there. all of my cracker is here in the funnel. Much of it as I could get in there. You can also see the liquid that came through the funnel. Actually, I'm not going to do anything with the liquid, but we are going to take this paper. Now that the petroleum ether has all drained through, the next procedure says to take this out, open it up. You can see that the cracker's kind of all in a big pile. What we'd like to do is spread that out a little bit to make it easier for it to dry. I'm going to use this glass stir rod. Spread that out into a nice, even, flat sample there. Now I actually don't want to lose any sample mass, so I'm going to have to try to scrape off any that's stuck to the glass stir rod here. So pretty good job cleaning off the glass stir rod, getting all the crumbs off of it. Now you can see that my crumbs of cracker are all spread out here. Now you might be wondering, well, what did you do? You just crumbled up a cracker and put it in a filter paper. But no, I've washed quite a bit of that lipids out of that cracker. They're down here dissolved in this petroleum ether on the bottom of the flask. So quite a bit of the fats and oils that were in the buttery cracker are no longer in this solid here. We've dissolved it out. We've extracted it using the petroleum ether. And I'm going to do the same for the potato chip and the corn chip, but this has to dry out in the drying oven overnight, so I'll have to put the part where we weigh it and process it on a separate video, because I'm not going to leave the video running all night. So at this point, you guys know that I have that gray oven in the back of the room, and I'm going to take this back there and put it in the oven. It's still labeled TK cracker. It's still readable there, even though the petroleum ether's smeared it out a little bit. And so tomorrow morning, if I do the second half of the video for lipids, I'll be able to just go back there and get it from the drying oven and come up and weigh it. So expect me to do that as well for the potato chip and the Frito in the same procedure, and share that data with you later. So there, I'll sign off for now and pick up this lab in a different video.